It's finally happened. A less than ethical bioresearch company accidentally released the T virus. It all started with a cough, some difficulty breathing, and pretty soon, tyrants, zombie dogs, and those gross guys with the long tongues started running rampant. Now there's only one way to enforce the quarantine that will save America. Forget social distancing, it's time for martial law. Martial law has been declared numerous times throughout U.S. history, from the Revolutionary War to the 1960s Civil Rights Movement. But what is martial law exactly, and what would it look like in modern life? Martial law is typically declared in times of national emergency, though what exactly constitutes an emergency varies from nation to nation. Once martial law is declared, most civil rights are temporarily suspended, and the U.S. military assumes control of all law enforcement duties, although existing law enforcement is still active and aids in establishing martial law. Because martial law pretty much suspends democracy as we know it, in the United States it has been sparingly used, and even when it has, it's been a very limited scope. If there's one thing country music has taught us, it's that Americans love their freedom, and they don't take kindly to the government infringing on it. Thus, martial law is only declared in the U.S. for the most extreme circumstances, for times when the military is needed to help maintain law and order. Recent incidents of martial law include its enactment after the attack on Pearl Harbor, but even then it was only declared in Hawaii, and only because an imminent invasion was feared. In the U.S., only the president has the power to enact martial law nationally. Each state governor has the right to enact martial law in their own state individually and enforce it with the aid of federal troops as well as the National Guard. Controversially, though, in 2007, President George W. Bush's administration added a provision into a military funding bill that allowed the president to take command of the National Guard units of each state without the governor's consent. Let's say your city ends up on the T-virus menu. One day you're working your 4 full-time jobs while also attending college and still not making rent, and suddenly people start turning into zombies and lickers all around you. The state governor gets on TV and announces he's enacting martial law to enforce a mandatory quarantine. The first thing you'll notice about your new life is that you've got a curfew again, only this one is much more restrictive and better enforced than the one your parents set up while you were in high school. You're not allowed to be out of your house from 8 p.m. to 9 a.m. every single day. The curfew is meant to control the flow of people, and it makes it easier for law enforcement to spot bad actors. During wartime, if you were violating curfew at 2 in the morning, there's a good chance you were an enemy saboteur. Curfews during a viral pandemic, though, can also help limit the spread of the disease. And if the outbreak is severe enough, you might not be allowed out of your home at all, except on specific days for specific times. A highly restricted curfew could, for instance, only allow you to leave your home for 3 hours every third day. Each part of a city could have a different curfew, and thus the spread of the virus would be highly limited, as only one part of the city would be away from home at any given time. In most nations, martial law automatically suspends all of your civil rights and gives the military complete police and judicial power. In the United States, though, Supreme Court decisions have worked to limit the scope of martial law. And even if martial law is declared, citizens still have a right to a civil trial. The arresting authority of military or law enforcement during martial law, however, is not restricted, meaning that you could be arrested and not immediately charged. And that certainly throws the door open to some very scary scenarios, with police and military arresting individuals as they see fit, and is one of the big reasons why martial law is so rarely declared. If a catastrophe is serious enough or lasts long enough, and martial law is necessary for an extended amount of time, along with a curfew, you may need to carry specially assigned movement and travel documents. These will be given to you by the authorities after carefully interrogating your personal life and your needs, as in what you do for a living and what type of non-home medical or specialized care you need. Then the authorities would hand you your documents, which authorize you to either be in violation of curfew or travel outside of established control zones so that you can do things like go to work or get a physical therapist appointment. These documents will typically be very specific about where you're allowed to go and when, helping the authorities to determine if you're in violation of curfew or travel restrictions. During World War II, many Nazi-occupied countries found themselves dealing with German-backed curfews and travel restrictions, necessitating special transit or travel documents. If martial law is declared nationally, you'll need those documents to leave your home city and travel anywhere else, and any foreign travel will have to be approved in advance. To enforce travel and movement restrictions, security checkpoints will be placed throughout your city and strategic areas. If the emergency is bad enough that segregation of the population and tight movement control is necessary, you could even see entire streets closed off and neighborhoods get barricaded. This will be done in order to ensure that there are only a select amount of avenues of travel through a city, which can be all overwatched by a series of security checkpoints. In the United States, elections are protected by the Constitution, and thus martial law cannot stop or impede an election from happening. During the Civil War, despite martial law having been established, there were still 2 major elections. Having strict travel restrictions, though, could certainly impede the democratic process. Want to learn about some of the craziest laws you might break during martial law? Check out our video, Crazy Laws That Still Exist Around the World. Or perhaps you prefer this other video instead. Either way, click one now. At least you can still watch your favorite YouTube channel during martial law.